The neon lights of downtown Seattle reflected off the rain-soaked streets as 28-year-old single mother Mia Thompson finished her late shift at Rosewood Medical Center. As a certified nursing assistant, Mia worked rotating shifts to maximize her income, often finishing at midnight to catch the shift differential pay that helped stretch her modest salary to cover rent and daycare for her 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Tonight had been particularly exhausting, with 2 staff members calling in sick and the emergency department overflowing with patients. Mia's feet ached in her practical shoes as she walked toward her 10-year-old Honda Civic, mentally calculating whether she had enough energy to stop for groceries or if cereal and sandwiches would have to suffice for tomorrow's meals. That's when she noticed him. A man in an expensive charcoal suit was sitting on the curb outside the upscale restaurant next to the medical center, his head in his hands. Even from a distance, Mia could tell he was in distress, and her nursing instincts immediately kicked in. She had learned to recognize when someone needed help, regardless of their circumstances. As she approached, she realized the man was younger than she had initially thought, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and the kind of tailored clothing that spoke of wealth and success. But success clearly hadn't protected him from whatever crisis had left him sitting alone on a sidewalk at midnight. "Excuse me, are you okay?" Mia asked gently, maintaining a respectful distance while assessing the situation. The man looked up, and she could see tears in his eyes along with the telltale signs of someone who had been drinking heavily. "I'm sorry, I don't want to bother anyone. I just need to figure out how to get home." Mia immediately understood the situation. "Did you drive here tonight?" "No, thank God," he replied, running his hands through his hair. "I took a ride share, but now my phone is dead, and I can't remember my address clearly enough to tell a cab driver." "I know that sounds ridiculous." "It doesn't sound ridiculous at all," Mia said compassionately. "Alcohol affects memory and cognitive function. You're actually being very responsible by not driving. Do you have any ID that might have your address?" The man fumbled for his wallet and pulled out a driver's license, squinting at it in the streetlight. "Michael Chen, 1247 Lakeview Drive," he read slowly. "That's me, but I can't seem to focus well enough to navigate getting there." Mia recognized the address as being in one of Seattle's most expensive neighborhoods, about 20 minutes away. Every practical part of her brain told her to call the man a taxi and continue with her own evening. But her heart recognized someone who was lost in more ways than geographic. "Michael, I'm Mia. I'm a nurse, and I can see that you're not in any condition to navigate the city alone tonight. I have a car, and I could drive you home if you'd like." Michael stared at her in amazement. "You would do that for a complete stranger?" "People help each other," Mia said simply. "That's how the world is supposed to work." During the drive through Seattle's quiet late-night streets, Mia learned that Michael was the CEO of Chen Technologies, a software company he had built from nothing over the past 8 years. Tonight had been intended as a celebration of landing the biggest contract in the company's history. But it had devolved into a spiral of self-medication when the weight of his success felt more isolating than triumphant. "I have everything I thought I wanted," Michael said, his words still slightly slurred but his thinking becoming clearer as they drove. "Money, recognition, a successful company. But I realized tonight that I don't have a single person in my life who cares about me as anything more than a business opportunity." Mia glanced at him in the rearview mirror, recognizing the profound loneliness beneath his professional achievements. "Success without connection can feel pretty empty." "Exactly," Michael said, surprised by her understanding. "Everyone wants something from me. Investors want returns, employees want raises, dates want expensive dinners and gifts. No one just wants to know who I am when all that stuff is stripped away." "Who are you when all that stuff is stripped away?" Mia asked, genuinely curious. Michael was quiet for several minutes, considering the question. "I don't know if I remember anymore. I used to love building things, solving problems, creating solutions that helped people. Now I spend most of my time in board meetings and investor presentations, talking about market share and profit margins." As they navigated the winding roads toward his neighborhood, Mia found herself sharing her own story. Raising Lily alone after her ex-husband had abandoned them when Lily was diagnosed with mild autism, working multiple jobs to afford the therapy and specialized care that helped her daughter thrive, and finding purpose in her work helping patients and families through medical crises. "You have a daughter?" Michael asked, his interest genuine rather than polite. "Lily? She's 4, incredibly smart, and the best thing that ever happened to me," Mia said with obvious love. Being a single parent is challenging, but watching her grow and learn and overcome obstacles makes every difficult day worthwhile. "What kind of obstacles?" Michael asked gently. "Lily is on the autism spectrum, so she processes the world differently than other kids. She needs extra support with social situations and communication, but she's incredibly gifted with patterns and mathematics. She can solve puzzles that stump me, and she sees beauty in things most people overlook." Michael listened with growing admiration for this woman who was navigating challenges he couldn't imagine while maintaining such obvious love and optimism. "That sounds like it requires enormous strength and patience." "It requires love," Mia corrected. "Everything else flows from that." When they reached Michael's address, Mia was surprised by the understated elegance of his home. A modern house with clean lines and thoughtful landscaping. "Impressive without being ostentatious. Mia, I don't know how to thank you for this," Michael said as they sat in her car outside his house. "You didn't have to help a drunk stranger, especially after working what I'm sure was a long shift." "Everyone deserves help when they need it," Mia replied. "And you weren't just a drunk stranger? You were someone who was hurting and trying to make responsible choices in a difficult situation." Michael looked at her with something approaching wonder. "Can I ask you something that might sound strange?" "Sure." "When was the last time someone helped you without wanting anything in return?" Mia considered the question, realizing she couldn't easily answer it. Most of the support in her life came with conditions or expectations, whether from family members who questioned her choices or social services, programs that required extensive documentation and compliance. "That's a harder question than it should be," she admitted. "Would you let me return the favor sometime?" Michael asked. "Not as payment for tonight, but because I genuinely like to help someone who spends her life helping others." Mia studied his face, seeing sincerity rather than obligation or pity. "What did you have in mind?" "I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out what would actually be helpful rather than assuming I know what you need." 3 weeks later, Mia received a phone call that would change her family's trajectory forever. "Ms. Thompson, this is Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the Seattle Children's Development Center. I understand your daughter Lily is on the autism spectrum and that you've been seeking additional therapeutic support." "Yes, but our insurance doesn't cover the level of services she needs, and the waiting lists for subsidized programs are over a year long," Mia replied, prepared for another disappointment. "Actually, I'm calling because we've received a grant that specifically covers comprehensive autism support services for children of healthcare workers. The grant covers not just therapy, but also specialized education support, social skills development, and family counseling. Would you be interested in learning more?" Mia felt tears form in her eyes as she realized that someone had created exactly the kind of help her family needed. It wasn't until months later that she learned Michael had researched autism services extensively and established the grant program through his company's foundation. But Michael's support didn't stop with the grant. He began showing up in small, meaningful ways, sponsoring a sensory-friendly movie screening at the local theater that Lily could attend comfortably, funding improvements to the pediatric wing at Mia's hospital, and eventually asking if Mia and Lily would like to join him for family-friendly activities that accommodated Lily's needs. "You know," Mia said one Saturday afternoon as they watched Lily play on specially designed playground equipment that Michael had helped fund for children with sensory processing differences, "I think you found your answer." "What answer?" Michael asked, though he was smiling because he suspected he knew. "You asked who you are when all the business success is stripped away. You're someone who pays attention to what people actually need, who uses his resources to solve problems that matter, and who shows up consistently for the people he cares about." Michael watched Lily demonstrate how the playground's texture panels worked, explaining their purpose to another child with the patient teaching style she had inherited from her mother. "I learned that from you," he said quietly, Before I met you, I thought helping people meant writing checks or making donations. But you showed me that real help means seeing people as individuals, understanding their specific situations, and caring enough to provide what they actually need rather than what you think they should want. 6 months after that rainy night, Michael and Mia were sharing quiet coffee in her small apartment while Lily practiced piano on the keyboard Michael had given her when they discovered her perfect pitch and musical abilities. "Can I tell you something? That might sound presumptuous?" Michael asked, echoing the words from their first meeting. "I'm listening," Mia replied, setting down her coffee cup. "I've been thinking about that night when you drove me home, and I've realized that you didn't just save me from making bad decisions while drunk. You saved me from a life that was successful but empty, purposeful but lonely." Mia felt her heart skip as she recognized the deeper meaning in his words. "I've fallen in love with you, Mia. Not because you helped me, but because of who you are. The way you love Lily unconditionally. The way you see potential in everyone you meet. The way you make me want to be worthy of the kindness you show to the world." Mia looked at this man who had transformed from a lost stranger into someone who understood her family's needs and supported their dreams without trying to change or fix them. "I've fallen in love with you too," she admitted, but not with the successful CEO. With the person who sits on the floor playing with Lily, who learns about autism because it matters to her, who shows up to her therapy appointments because he wants to understand her world. "That's who I want to be," Michael said simply. "For both of you, for as long as you'll have me." 2 years later, at their wedding reception, Lily served as the ring bearer. Wearing noise-canceling headphones decorated with flowers and walking down the aisle with the confident stride of a child who knew she was loved exactly as she was. In his wedding speech, Michael talked about the night a tired nurse chose to help a stranger, never knowing that her kindness would teach him the difference between success and fulfillment. "Mia taught me that the most important question isn't how much you can achieve, but how much love you can give," he said, his voice carrying across the room filled with the blended communities they had created together. "And Lily taught me that the most beautiful minds are often the ones that see the world differently than everyone else." As they danced their first dance as a married couple, with Lily creating her own interpretive dance nearby, Mia reflected on how a single act of compassion on a rainy night had created the family she had never dared to dream possible. Sometimes the most important rescues happen when we're not trying to be heroes, but simply choosing to be human beings who care about the welfare of others. And sometimes the people we help end up saving us in return, showing us that the greatest success is measured not by what we accumulate, but by the love we share and the lives we touch along the way. If this story reminded you that acts of compassion can create unexpected connections and that the most meaningful relationships often begin with simple kindness, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to believe in the power of helping others. Subscribe for more stories about love, family, and second chances, and let us know in the comments about a time when helping a stranger led to something beautiful in your own life. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with choosing to care about someone else's well-being.